He was my brother, my protector, until I discovered his security fees were a full-blown extortion scheme. What I did next shattered our family and freed our home. I never thought my own brother could betray me. Growing up, David was the fearless one, always shielding me from bullies on the playground, insisting I wear his cast-off jackets on cold nights, and defending our family's honor whenever it wavered. So when he called one evening, announcing he'd launched Iron Shield Security, I felt a swell of pride. He spoke with the quiet confidence of someone who'd finally found his purpose, protecting the people he cared about most. Our parents had grown increasingly uneasy after a rash of break-ins in the neighborhood. Late-night footsteps had echoed down the alley behind our modest home, and valuable tools vanished from the garage. When David offered to install cameras, alarms, and even hire a uniformed guard to patrol our driveway, we barely hesitated. "I'll do it at cost," he promised, the warm gleam in his eyes convincing us he meant every word. Little did we know that his cost would soon eclipse our mortgage. 2 weeks later, David showed up with bulky surveillance monitors, motion detectors, and a hulking control panel that looked more at home in a bank vault than our living room. Mom fussed over the wires, and Dad admired the steel-reinforced door latches. Even I felt a rush of security as David demonstrated how the sensors would trigger sirens and alert his off-site command center. "No more sleepless nights," he said, rapping his knuckles on the console with satisfaction. The first month's bill arrived on crisp stationery. "Protection fee, $500, it read. We exchanged amused glances. Surely this was a token fee to cover his equipment costs? But when the second invoice slid under our door, the fee had doubled to $1,000. And by the third month it soared to $1,800, itemized as risk assessment surcharge and proximity alert premium. A knot formed in my stomach. I approached David hesitantly. "Bro," I said one Sunday afternoon as he tightened a camera mount above our front porch, "these fees are a lot. We're talking thousands each month." He glanced at me, brows furrowed. "I told you, Josh," he said firmly. "Iron Shield isn't a charity. Security is expensive. Plus, your family, you get my best rates." He winked, then climbed back into his van. I watched the door slam shut, uncertainty churning in my gut. By month 4, the protection fee had ballooned to $2,500, and our savings were taking a hit. I noticed odd line items: VIP neighborhood tax, emergency response guarantee, and the most curious of all, brotherly loyalty incentive, credited back to our account, but then immediately withdrawn as part of a loyalty maintenance fee. At dinner, Dad sighed, pushing peas around his plate. "I thought this was your thing, David," he muttered. "Helping family. Now it feels like we're paying rent to live here." Tension crackled at home. Mom tried to smooth things over, praising David's professionalism and reminding us that these systems deterred trouble. Yet none of us had felt harassed by intruders since the install. Maybe because David's cameras spooked them away. But still, something felt off. The only movement on the monitors was our cat Paddington strutting across the lawn at dawn. Meanwhile, the bills kept climbing. One night, unable to sleep, I logged into the Iron Shield client portal with the username David had set up for us. The dashboard gleamed with security metrics. Alerts received, 12. Alarms dispatched, 3. Break-ins prevented, 5. Yet when I cross-checked with my phone's notifications, I'd only received one real alert that month: an accidental door sensor triggered by our cleaning lady. I took screenshots and compared them to the monthly service reports David emailed. The numbers didn't match. It looked like he was inflating incidents to justify his fees. My heart pounded as I scrolled further. Under the client activity log, dates and times were color-coded: green for routine check-in, yellow for suspicious activity, and red for alarm event. But when I dug into timestamps, I realized the red events often occurred at times when David himself was at our house. 11:47 p.m. on October 12th, when he installed the panic button. 2:03 a.m. on November 5th, the same night he installed the driveway floodlights. Each alarm conveniently aligned with his jobs here, giving him grounds to levy surcharges. I closed the laptop, guilt twisting in my chest. Could I really confront him? He was family, after all, and the last thing I wanted was a rift. But $2,500 a month meant sacrificing groceries and delaying repairs on the roof. My sister Emily, a college student, had been forced to put off enrollment in her summer program because Dad was skimping on tuition. Something had to give. That weekend, I visited the local library to pull business records on Iron Shield Security. In the bound volumes of the county clerk's office, I found David's incorporation documents. Start date, address, list of directors, none of whom were family. A tiny print note on page 4 to 17 caught my eye. Registered to conduct security services outside a 20-mile radius requires additional state licensing. Our home was inside that radius. In other words, David was operating without proper permits, exposing all of us to liability. Armed with this revelation, I drafted a plan. First, I'd confront David directly, give him a chance to explain. If he refused to lower his fees or legitimize his operations, I'd gather proof of inflated alarms and unlicensed practice. Then I'd report him to the state regulators and expose his racket publicly. It was a gamble, risk tearing apart our family ties or continue funding his profiteering. But as I slipped the librarian's photocopies into my backpack, I felt a fierce clarity. Sometimes the price of protection is paying a dearer cost to your own integrity. Update 1. The morning after my library visit, I woke before dawn with a simmering mix of determination and dread. David's van rumbled away down the street at 6:15 a.m., his first client of the day. So I slipped quietly into my home office, careful not to wake our parents. My laptop glowed on the desk and I opened 2 new folders, Incidents and Licensing. Inside Incidents, I imported the screenshots of the client portal's event log alongside my phone's actual notification history. Under Licensing, I scanned and saved the photocopied pages from the county clerk, showing the state's 20-mile licensing requirement. Next, I cross-referenced every alarm event timestamp against David's work schedule, which he'd helpfully uploaded in his weekly email to us. October 12th, 11:47 p.m. panic button installed. November 5th, 2:03 a.m. driveway lights. December 1st, 1:22 a.m. motion sensor test. Of the 12 break-ins prevented, he claimed, 10 lined up perfectly with installation or maintenance appointments. Only 2 unscheduled alerts remained, and those, I'd confirmed, were false alarms triggered by our cat Paddington and our upstairs neighbor's late return. I created a simple spreadsheet detailing each event. By noon, I had my smoking gun, 10 inflated alarms. Each inflated break-in prevented translated directly into a risk surcharge fee on the monthly invoice. I copied the rows into the incidents folder and flagged them in bright red. But evidence alone wouldn't be enough. I needed testimony, confirmation that David's premium security offers were nothing more than extortion. I reached out to my sister Emily, who'd been studying business law at college. Over lunch, I pulled up the licensing statutes on her tablet. She confirmed that conducting security business within 20 miles of the registered address without a state license was a serious violation, punishable by fines up to $10,000 and possible injunctions. We saved a PDF of the statute, highlighted the relevant lines, and labeled it Statute Sake 48.301A. While Emily drafted a crisp summary of the licensing breach, I messaged Dad. "Hey Dad, I've found some inconsistencies in the security reports. Can we talk tonight?" He replied, "Sure. What do you need?" I knew that meeting would be awkward, but necessary. Before dinner, I printed my evidence, portal screenshots, library photocopies, and the spreadsheet. I bundled them into a neat binder and set it on the kitchen counter where Dad would see it. Over meatloaf, Dad noticed the binder. "What's this?" he asked. I swallowed hard. "I looked into David's invoices," I began, "and his alarm events often happen when he's here installing or testing equipment. Plus, he's not licensed for our neighborhood. I think our protection fees are a racket." Mom's fork clattered. David sat up, face flush. He sputtered, "Kid, you don't know what you're talking about. Those tests still count as security events." Dad held up a hand. "David, let him finish." I laid out the spreadsheet. "Here are 10 alerts that coincide exactly with your service calls. No real threats. And here's the statute, operating without the proper license." I pointed to the highlighted text. "If we report this, it could cost you thousands in fines." David's eyes darkened. "You crossed a line, Josh." He grabbed the binder, thumbing through pages. "Family doesn't sell family out." He slammed the binder shut, stormed out of the kitchen, and vanished into his van. Silence settled around the table. Mom's eyes brimmed with tears. Dad placed a hand on my shoulder. "Thank you for doing the homework," he said quietly. "We'll talk to him later." That night, I uploaded the entire binder to a secure cloud folder and shared access with Emily. She suggested we draft a simple cease and desist letter. Demand that David refund the inflated fees, obtain the proper license within 30 days, and revert to the original $500 monthly rate. Otherwise, we'd file a formal complaint with the State Department of Public Safety. I drafted the letter by midnight, then slept uneasily, knowing that tomorrow our family bonds might fracture further, but also that integrity sometimes demands painful reckonings. Hambiolai. Update 2. The next morning, I printed the cease and desist letter on official-looking letterhead, white, thick stock, with my name and address in the header. It read in clear, uncompromising language. Cease and desist. Demand for refund, compliance, and license acquisition. Iron Shield Security must immediately refund all risk surcharge and premium event fees invoiced since October 1, 2024. Revert monthly protection fees to the originally promised $500. Obtain and furnish proof of valid state security licensing for our address within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in formal complaints to the State Department of Public Safety, referral for civil damages, and publication of your business practices to consumer protection agencies and local media. I signed the letter, slid it into an envelope addressed to David at our home, and delivered it by hand. No ambiguity, no chance for, "I never got it." Then I emailed a PDF copy to the State Department's Security Licensing Division, attaching the statute, my evidence spreadsheet, and the unlicensed operating notice from the library archives. A click on send lodged our first formal complaint against him. By early afternoon, our phone lines were buzzing. First came a curt auto response from the licensing division. "Your complaint has been received. Investigation will commence within 10 business days." Next, before Dad even saw the letter, David stormed through the front door, slamming it hard enough to rattle the glass. His face was pale, eyes blazing. "You went behind my back?" he thundered, spotting the binder on the coffee table. He snatched it up and flipped through pages. "I trusted you to keep this in the family." Dad rose slowly, hands open. "David, we all appreciate what you've tried to do, but these fees are crippling us, and you're not licensed. We had to take action." David's jaw clenched. "So you'll throw me under the bus for a few bucks?" He ripped the letter from the binder. "Fine. If you want a fight, you'll get one." With that, he stormed into the garage. My heart sank. He looked like he was going to rip our security system out by its wires. I dashed after him. "David, wait," I called, but he slammed the garage door in my face. I heard clanging inside, then the van roar to life as he backed out. He sped off down the street without a word. Inside, the house felt hollow. Mom wept in the kitchen. Dad looked at me with a mix of pride and remorse. "You did what you had to," he said quietly. "I'll try to calm him down." Over the next 2 days, tension crackled like static. We hadn't heard from David, and our security monitor went dark. The control panel had been disconnected, and the website portal was unreachable. Worse, our home felt exposed, the camera's dark eyes staring blankly into the cold air. For the first time since the break-ins, I felt vulnerable. But the State Department's email arrived shortly thereafter, and with it, a spark of hope. Investigation opened. Please provide any further documentation regarding unlicensed activity. A field inspector may visit your premises. Armed with that confirmation, I reached out to the local neighborhood association via the community's private Facebook group. I posted a measured summary. "Heads up, Elmwood neighbors, my brother's security company, Iron Shield, installed cams and alarms in my home last fall. After comparing invoices to real events, I discovered he's billing us thousands on false break-in prevented fees, and he's operating without a license. I've filed a formal complaint with the State Department of Public Safety. If you've used Iron Shield, please check your bills and share your experience here." Within hours, responses poured in. 3 neighbors confirmed identical patterns. Phantom premium event line items tied to Iron Shield visits, sudden fee hikes without notice, and rude calls when they questioned invoices. A 4th neighbor reported that after pushback, her service was abruptly canceled, leaving her unprotected. Their anecdotes formed an unmistakable pattern. I compiled their screenshots and affidavits, then emailed the full packet to the licensing investigator. Meanwhile, word reached a local consumer watchdog blog. Within a day, the blogger, Carla Nguyen, published a brief exposé headlined, "Family Feud or Fraud? Local security firm under state investigation." It linked to my public post, with identifying details redacted, and noted the official licensing probe. The article racked up shares on Reddit's r/legaladvice, Nextdoor threads, and even a tiny ripple on Twitter among local journalists. That evening, David finally reappeared at home around 9 p.m., his shoulders slumped. He found Mom in the living room, scrolling through Carla's article on her phone. "I saw the blog post," he muttered, voice hollow. "What did you do?" Mom didn't hesitate. "We asked you to honor your promise, refund us, get licensed, stop the surcharge. Instead, you cut our service and forced us to go public." He sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. "I'm sorry," he said, voice thick with shame. "I thought I could help and make some money on the side. I never meant to hurt you." For a moment, the three of us sat in silence, the weight of his confession pressing down. Then Dad spoke. "If you're serious about fixing this, you'll cooperate with the state investigation, issue refunds by week's end, and schedule reinstatement of our system under a valid license. And you'll personally apologize to every neighbor you overcharged." David nodded, tears glistening. "I will. I'll make it right." Over the next week, the State Department's field inspector arrived unannounced. We walked him through our evidence binder, showed the disabled cameras in the garage, and let him interview Mom and Dad. He noted every discrepancy and immediately issued a notice of violation to Iron Shield, imposing a $2,500 fine and demanding license proof within 15 days, or face injunction and additional penalties. True to his word, David spent his weekend refunding neighbors via check and posting public apologies on community boards. He refiled his licensing paperwork with expedited service, applied for all required permits, and arranged for a professional state-licensed firm to inspect our system. The protection fees reverted to $500, itemized only for genuine service calls. He even added a clause to cap monthly charges at $750 total. By the second week of the state's deadline, Iron Shield security was fully compliant and transparent. David hosted a meet-and-greet barbecue for the neighborhood, grilled burgers, lemonade, and open conversation about consumer rights. He spoke candidly about how ambition had clouded his judgment, and thanked everyone for holding him accountable. That night, as the sun set over Elmwood Drive, I sat on our front porch beside David. The cameras blinked quietly above us, functional now, honest guardians rather than tools of exploitation. "I'm proud of you for fixing this," I said, handing him a soda. He smiled, a genuine warmth shining through. "Thanks for forcing my hand. I couldn't have admitted my mistakes without you." I raised my can in a toast. To family, and to knowing when to stand up, even when it hurts. Update 3. In the days after the neighborhood barbecue, a fragile peace settled over Elmwood Drive. David worked tirelessly alongside the state inspector to bring Iron Shield security into full compliance. He spent long hours studying licensing regulations, rewriting his service agreements in plain English, and personally hand-delivering refunds to every neighbor he had overcharged. Each door he knocked on, each conversation he had, chipped away at the resentment that had threatened to fracture our family and the community's trust. Yet beneath the surface, I wrestled with mixed emotions. I was proud of David's turnaround, but I also carried the guilt of having exposed him publicly. Late at night, I'd replay the moment I'd confronted him in the kitchen, watching his face flush with anger and hurt. Was there another way? Could I have handled it more gently? As I lay awake, I reminded myself that our parents' financial security and the neighborhood's well-being had been at stake, but the lingering ache of brotherly betrayal weighed on me. One crisp Saturday morning in early March, I found David poring over invoices in our kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating neat stacks of paper and a laptop showing the state licensing portal. He looked up as I entered. "Morning," he said quietly, offering me a mug of coffee. His eyes carried a weariness I hadn't seen before. "Thanks for letting me fix this." I swallowed. "You've done more than fix it, David. You've owned up, more than most people would." He managed a small smile. "It's been humbling. But I want to do more than just comply. I want to prove that Iron Shield can actually protect people, not exploit them. At that moment, our mom peeked in with freshly baked muffins. "Breakfast on the porch?" she suggested. We carried the food outside, settled at the picnic table under the budding magnolia tree, and savored the peace. Neighbors drifted by with friendly waves. A far cry from the tense standoff weeks before. By mid-March, David's rebranded Iron Shield 2.0 had its first fully licensed week of operation. He wore his new uniform, crisp navy polo embroidered with the official state seal, when he performed routine system checks. We even installed a small plaque beside our front door, denoting our home as an official Iron Shield demonstration site, complete with contact information and a QR code linking to transparent service records. Some neighbors laughed at the plaque's formality, others admired the gesture. With licensing secured, David's next challenge was to restore the system itself. He hopped over the fence to inspect the disabled control panel and cameras in the garage, accompanied by our father, who'd offered his amateur handyman skills. Side by side, the two men rewired sensors, replaced tampered cables, and recalibrated motion detectors until everything hummed smoothly. That evening, over takeout pizza, they clinked soda bottles in celebration. I felt a renewed pride, not just in David's business, but in our family's resilience. Just as stability seemed within reach, the first sign of trouble appeared on a Sunday afternoon. I was trimming the hedge in front of the porch when I noticed a sleek black SUV idling at the corner of our street. A sharply dressed man in mirrored sunglasses stepped out, briefcase in hand, and strolled confidently toward our house. His gait was too deliberate to be a casual visitor. "Can I help you?" I called, wiping sweat from my brow. He tilted the brim of his hat and flashed a crisp business card. "Mr. Malcolm Hayes, Regional Director of Sentinel Security Solutions. I believe you're the homeowner here. I'd like to talk about possibly upgrading your system." Sentinel Security was a national chain of security firms, notorious for high-pressure sales tactics and hidden fees, eerily reminiscent of David's earlier failings, but on a corporate scale. My chest tightened. "I'm not interested," I said, stepping back. Mr. Hayes smiled thinly. "I understand your hesitation, but Sentinel has exclusive access to satellite monitoring, AI-driven threat assessment, and armored response units. Our introductory rate is competitive." He clicked a pen. "May I show you a proposal?" "No, thank you," I repeated, but his gaze shifted to the Iron Shield plaque on our front gate. "I see you've just updated your licensing. Congratulations. But small-scale operations can't match the resources of a national network." He opened his briefcase to reveal glossy brochures illustrating armored vehicles and live-feed command centers. My mind raced. Was he here to poach David's clientele? Or worse, to lure neighbors into an even bigger scam? I closed the gate firmly. "Please leave," I said. Mr. Hayes paused, then gave a practiced nod. "As you wish. But consider this. True security demands scale and capital. Small companies simply can't offer the same guarantees." He turned and walked back to the SUV, his mirrored glasses reflecting the bright afternoon light. When I told David and Dad inside, David's jaw set. That's the kind of operation I was trying to avoid, a corporate predator stepping in to exploit fears. Dad frowned. "Should we file a complaint?" "Not yet," David said thoughtfully, "but he's gauging us. I need to prepare." Over the next few days, Sentinel's presence became more insidious. Flyers appeared slipped under neighbors' doors. "Sentinel, your shield against any threat," with flowcharts promising 24/7 armored response. Several neighbors called our home, asking for comparisons between Iron Shield and Sentinel. Some even told me how Hayes had complimented our demonstration plaque, as if offering a wink and nod. I realized the new threat would test everything David had rebuilt: trust, reputation, and the community's loyalty. If neighbors switched to Sentinel, David's fledgling redemption could collapse. Worse, if Hayes's pitch included hidden clauses, my family would again face unjust fees, this time orchestrated by a corporate machine. Determined to defend our home turf, I convened an emergency neighborhood meeting in our backyard. About 20 neighbors turned out, drawn by my hastily sent invites. David stood beside me, looking nervous but resolute. "Iron Shield may not have Sentinel satellites or armored cars," I began, "but we have something they don't: accountability. When you pay David, you know exactly what you're getting. No phantom alarms, no hidden surcharges, and a direct line to the man who answers your calls personally. A neighbor, Mrs. Patel, nodded. You came here after we were threatened by late fees. David made it right. That matters. Another, Mr. Castillo, chimed in. Sentinel's brochure doesn't mention their standard 6-month auto-renewal with 20% rate hikes. I checked the fine print. We passed around the flyers and brochures, comparing terms line by line. Several neighbors had Sentinel's sample contracts. To our collective dismay, the small print outlined non-refundable initiation fees, automatic rate increases tied to inflation indices, and a 2-year lock-in clause. It was a corporate version of David's earlier scheme, only more opaque and enforceable. David stepped forward. I've negotiated a group rate for Elmwood Drive residents. No initiation fees, no auto increases, and a cap on emergency response surcharges. If you sign up with Iron Shield by the end of the week, I'll lock in these terms for 2 years. He handed out printed agreement summaries. The crowd murmured in approval. By the end of that impromptu meeting, 10 neighbors had committed to renew with Iron Shield. I felt a swell of relief. Our small company's personal touch had triumphed over corporate intimidation. But the battle wasn't over. On the final day of our group rate offer, I received a chilling voicemail on my cell. This is Malcolm Hayes. Your little backyard meeting won't stop Sentinel from reclaiming this market. Enjoy your moment while it lasts. His voice dripped with menace, an echo of David's earlier threats against our family finances. I knew then that Sentinel would escalate, hostile marketing, undercutting rates, maybe even sabotage. That night, David and I stayed up planning our counterattack. We'd launch a transparent Know Your Security campaign, informational pamphlets delivered to every mailbox, a public Q&A session at the community center, and a social media series comparing real case studies of Iron Shield's reliable service against Sentinel's corporate contract nightmares. We drafted infographics showing licensing statuses, fee breakdowns, and community testimonials. As we worked, side by side at the kitchen table, I felt a renewed bond with my brother. The conflict with Sentinel wasn't just about business. It was a final test of the integrity and resilience we'd fought so hard to rebuild. By dawn, we had a full plan for update number 4, taking the fight to the wider public and securing Iron Shield's place in the neighborhood for good. We were ready to prove that real protection comes from honesty, accountability, and a community standing together against exploitation. Update 4. By late April, Iron Shield's Know Your Security campaign was in full swing. David and I spent an entire weekend assembling informational pamphlets that outlined the perils of hidden fees, licensing requirements, and contract traps. Each tract featured side-by-side comparisons of Iron Shield's transparent service agreement and Sentinel's fine print nightmares. We printed 500 flyers, color-coded by street block, and hand-delivered them to every mailbox on Elmwood Drive. Our goal was simple: inform every neighbor before Sentinel's next sales push. Watching neighbors pause to read the pamphlets and nod in understanding felt like laying down the first stones of a fortress of awareness. That Wednesday evening, we hosted a public Q&A at the community center. Over 60 residents squeezed into folding chairs. A projector showed slides detailing our licensing timeline, refund data, and breakdowns of actual alarm incidents. David spoke first, apologizing again for his earlier mistakes and pledging eternal transparency. I followed, walking the audience through the spreadsheet of inflated alarms and showing real text exchanges with Sentinel's regional director. When I finished, hands shot up. Questions ranged from how do I verify contract clauses to what recourse do I have if hidden fees appear. We answered each honestly, empowering attendees to read every line of their security agreements. Concurrently, our social media blitzkrieg went live. We launched an Instagram series, #KnowYourSecurity, posting concise infographics and short video clips of the Q&A highlights. On Facebook, neighbors shared their own experiences, screenshots of unfair invoices, and praise for Iron Shield's prompt refunds. Even Nextdoor buzzed with threads comparing local security providers. By the end of the week, our posts had over 2,000 engagements, drawing comments from curious residents in adjacent neighborhoods. People tagged friends and family, generating fresh leads for Iron Shield and spreading our consumer education message beyond Elmwood Drive. Sentinel's response came quicker than expected. The very next morning, a sleek black SUV rolled down our block again, and another sales rep, Ms. Vega, left glossy brochures at doorsteps, this time emblazoned with immediate rate/30% off first year. Her flyers promised no initiation fees and a money-back guarantee. But beneath the bold claims lay tiny footnotes. Applicable only if no claims filed. Automatic renewal at plus 20%. Monitoring aggregated with parallel services billed separately. By side-by-side placement next to our own simplified one-page agreement, those hidden terms jumped off the page. A growing chorus of neighbors began handing Sentinel's brochures back, shaking their heads in rejection. Determined to seal the victory, David organized an open house demonstration at our home. He sent formal invitations to every Elmwood Drive resident. See Iron Shield's system in action. No obligation. We set up live camera feeds, showed real-time motion sensor reports, and walked guests through each component, from the control panel's audit trail to the off-site command center protocols. We even invited the state inspector, who praised our compliance and offered tips on best practices. The event drew over 40 neighbors, many eager to sign up on the spot. By day's end, Iron Shield had secured 12 new contracts, cementing our reputation for honesty and community care. But Sentinel wasn't done. A week later, I discovered our demonstration site plaque had been defaced. Someone had spray-painted over the QR code. I raced outside to find it smeared with black paint. My heart sank. Was this a random act of vandalism or a targeted warning? I shared photos in our neighborhood group, and several residents volunteered to help clean and repair the sign. Within hours, a small team scrubbed away the paint, restored the code, and posted a new weatherproof cover. The act only strengthened our unity. No amount of graffiti could intimidate a community that had reclaimed its voice. Finally, Malcolm Hayes himself reappeared, this time at our open house event. He strode up to David, offering a firm handshake. "I see your little demonstration worked," he said with a half-smile. "But Sentinel still leads the industry." David met his gaze coolly. "Industry leaders respect state regulations and client trust," he replied. "We offer real service at fair prices. Your claims don't hold up under scrutiny." Hayes' smile faltered as neighbors stepped forward, sharing their Sentinel flyers and pointing out the fine print clauses. Surrounded by a crowd united against exploitation, the sales representative had nowhere to hide. With a final nod, he turned and left, this time without a sales pitch or brochure. In the weeks that followed, Sentinel quietly withdrew its unsolicited offers from Elmwood Drive. Neighbors reported no further sales calls, and their final flyers remained untouched in trash cans. Meanwhile, Iron Shield's phone rang steadily, not just from our block, but from nearby streets and even other towns. Word of our campaign had spread. Renters and homeowners alike sought a provider they could trust. David hired 2 new technicians, obtained advanced state certifications, and began offering free annual audits for existing clients, a thank-you gesture to the community that had saved his business. Back at home, Dad beamed with pride, and Mom declared that our family dinners had never been so peaceful. Our rebuilt security system hummed quietly above the porch, no longer a symbol of extortion but of genuine protection. David and I often walked the neighborhood after dusk, pointing out street lights and camera angles to neighbors, sharing safety tips, and listening to stories of how our transparency had helped them avoid predatory contracts elsewhere. As spring deepened, Elmwood Drive became known as the Safety Street, a model of community-driven vigilance. Local media ran a follow-up story on our campaign's success, and city officials contacted us to speak at a consumer rights forum. I realized that what began as a bitter family conflict had transformed into a broader movement for accountability in the security industry. Our small victory had cascading effects. Other neighborhoods formed their own Know Your Security groups, and state regulators cited our case study and training materials for new inspectors. When this all began, I never imagined that protecting my own home would require uprooting a family bond and rallying an entire street. I learned that true security isn't a product you buy, it's a promise you keep, backed by transparency and shared responsibility. The real price of protection wasn't the fees we paid, it was the vigilance and unity we earned together.